I can still hear his scream echoing down the company hallway. It was an animalistic roar from someone who lost everything in a second. I was hiding behind the human resources door, 16 years old, and my hands shaking, holding my cell phone with all those recordings. The man I called father was dragged out by two security guards, looking directly at me with a hatred I had never seen before. "You're going to pay for this, kid." But he had already made me pay too much throughout my life. My name is Lucas, and I am 19 years old now. I am sitting in this empty square because I need to tell this story. It is not easy to talk about this, even after so much time has passed. People only see a normal boy, perhaps too quiet, with some scars that are not all visible. No one knows what happened. No one knows what I did. When you hear that a son destroyed his own father's career by exposing his secrets to the entire company where he worked, what do you think? That I'm a traitor? An ungrateful, manipulative liar who wanted to harm his own family? That's what most people think. Even my mother thought so at first. But there's a reason why I spent 6 months in a rehabilitation center for minors. It wasn't because of what I did to my father, but because of what happened afterwards. Because of what he did to me and what I did to myself. I was branded as the problem child, the rebellious teenager who made up horrible stories about his hardworking father, who was respected by everyone. Roberto Mendoza, sales manager, 15 years at the same company, family man. No one wanted to believe the truth until they had no choice. I'm not here to justify myself or ask for forgiveness. I just want someone to understand. If you're really paying attention to my story, if you're really following what I'm saying and not just listening without feeling anything, please like this video right now. Subscribe to the Traumatic Testimonials channel, turn on the bell, and comment on where you're watching this from. I need to know that I'm not talking to myself, that there's someone on the other side willing to suspend judgment until they hear everything, because what I'm about to tell you is not what it seems at first glance. It never is. Do you think you know stories of domestic violence? Do you think you've heard it all? But what happened inside that house at 47 Jacaranda Street for 8 years straight was something no one could imagine looking at my father in his suit and tie with his perfect smile in family photos. The worst part wasn't the beatings. It wasn't the bruises I hid with long-sleeve shirts even in summer. It was something else. Something I kept to myself for years until I couldn't take it anymore. And when I finally spoke up, no one wanted to listen. So I made them listen. It wasn't always like that. I have memories of a normal life until I was 8 years old. We lived in Monterey, me, my mother Clara, and my father Roberto. He worked for a small company at the time. He spent more time at home. I remember when he taught me to ride a bike in the park near our house, the trips to the beach in Tampico on weekends, Sundays watching soccer. My mother smiled a lot back then. Our house was simple but comfortable. We had a normal routine: school, work, family dinners. My father wasn't very affectionate, but he wasn't aggressive either. Sometimes he would get impatient when I made a mess or didn't obey him the first time, but nothing out of the ordinary. I was a happy kid with friends at school and good grades. I dreamed of being a soccer player or an astronaut like any other kid. Everything changed when he received an offer to work in Mexico City with a much higher salary and a management position. I remember his enthusiasm as he talked about how our lives would improve, how we would have more comforts, how I could study at the best schools. My mother didn't want to go. She had her whole family in Monterey, her job as a teacher, her friends, but she ended up giving in, as she always did when it came to his plans. We moved when I was 8.5 to a bigger apartment in an exclusive area of the city, a private school for me. New clothes, new furniture, a new car. My mother got a job at a nearby school, but she earned much less than before proportionally. The balance of power at home changed completely. It was gradual. First came the little criticisms, almost disguised as jokes. "This boy is becoming too soft, Clara. That's how he'll turn out. Lucas, stop crying over everything. Real men don't cry." Then the impatience increased, shouting when I took too long to do my homework. Increasingly severe punishments for minor mistakes. At the age of 9, I received my first slap. It was when I accidentally spilled a glass of soda on his laptop. It wasn't intentional. I tripped over the rug in the living room, but he didn't want to know. The slap came so fast that I didn't even see it. I just felt the burning on my cheek and heard my mother yell at him for the first and only time, "Roberto, don't touch the boy." He looked at her in a way I'll never forget. Cold, calculating. "Would you rather raise a man or a useless person? Because I'm not going to keep a good for nothing in this house." That night, I heard the two of them arguing in their room. The next day, my mother had a black eye. He said he had bumped into the corner of the door during the night. It was the first of many excuses he would invent in the years to come. From then on, everything quickly went downhill. My father started drinking more. His new job brought more pressure and more responsibilities. He came home stressed, and anything could set him off. A bad grade at school, a messy room, noise during the soccer games he watched, even a look he interpreted as defiant. At age 10, I learned to anticipate the signs. The way he loosened his tie when he got home, the sound of the tequila bottle being opened, the tone of his voice when he called my name. I developed a sixth sense for knowing when it was best to disappear, to stay quiet in my room, to pretend I was asleep. My mother tried to intervene sometimes, but she was afraid too. Roberto was a different man when he drank. He called her incompetent. He said she wasn't even capable of raising a child properly. He humiliated her in front of visitors by criticizing her cooking, her clothes, the way she spoke. Little by little, she faded away. The cheerful woman I knew in Monterrey disappeared, giving way to a shadow that walked along the walls of the house, trying not to make any noise. When I turned 12, my father received another promotion, senior manager, even higher salary. He celebrated with his friends from work. He came home at 3 in the morning. I had gotten a 6, 5 in math that day. It wasn't a bad grade, but not by his standards. I woke up to him pulling the covers off me, yelling about the grade. He said I was wasting the money he spent on private school. He called me stupid, useless. Then came the first punch in the stomach, hard enough to knock the wind out of me. "The next time you embarrass me with grades like that, it will be worse." My mother came into the room when she heard me crying. He pushed her out, saying he would sleep on the couch because he couldn't stand us both anymore. The next day, during breakfast, he acted as if nothing had happened. That was the pattern. The violence always came at night, almost always related to drinking, and in the morning it was as if it had been a nightmare, except for the marks on my body and the terror I felt every time I heard the key turning in the door. At age 13, I tried to ask for help for the first time. I told the school counselor that my father was hitting me. She called my parents in for a talk. My father cried in front of her. He said he was going through a difficult time at work, that he had a drinking problem, but was seeking help, that he loved me more than anything. He promised he would never touch me again. That night, he broke my arm. "So you learn not to make up lies about your father." We went to the hospital. He said I had fallen down the stairs of the building while playing tag with friends. He looked me in the eye while talking to the doctor, challenging me to contradict him. I remained silent. I tried to run away from home twice that year. The first time the police found me at the bus station trying to buy a ticket to Monterrey. The second time, I hid at a school friend's house for 3 days, until his parents found me and called my house. After that, my father took away my Sundays, took away my cell phone, and forbade me from going out with friends. I was practically living under house arrest. School was my only refuge, but even there, I was afraid to talk to anyone, to try to ask for help again. My mother started taking antidepressants. Sometimes she tried to protect me by getting between us when he came at me, but she ended up getting beaten too. Other times she just didn't react, as if she were numb. I don't blame her. She was a victim too. At 14, I realized that no one would help us, that we were alone in this, and that's when I started thinking about how to get out of that situation on my own. My father was two people. At work, he was Roberto Mendoza, an exemplary manager, mentor to newbies, friend to everyone. At home, he was a monster. I didn't understand how no one realized how he managed to fool so many people. The worst moments were when he had visitors at home, coworkers, his boss, important clients. Suddenly, we were the perfect family. He ruffled my hair, made jokes, proudly talked about my grades, which were never good enough when we were alone. My mother smiled a vacant smile as she served drinks and snacks. I had to participate in the charade. "Tell them about your science project, son. Tell Dr. Martinez how you won that swimming medal." And I would talk, smile, pretend, because I knew what would happen if I ruined his image. Once, when I was 15, I almost broke character. His boss, Mr. Cardenas, was at our house for dinner. My father boasted about how he supported all my interests and hobbies. Lucas has a talent for music. We bought him a guitar last year, right? He said. It was a lie. I had never played guitar in my life. I would never spend money on that. Actually, I began to say. His gaze froze me. His hand under the table squeezed my thigh so hard it left bruises. Actually, I'm still learning, I finished, but I really like it. Thanks, Dad. That night, after everyone left, he dragged me into the bathroom, turned on the shower to drown out the sound, and beat me with his belt until I couldn't stand up. If you embarrass me in front of my boss again, I'll break every finger on your hand. Do you understand? That's when I began to understand how important his professional image was to him. More than anything else, that job was his pride and joy, his identity. He could be a monster at home, but no one could ever know. I also realized that the abuse was getting worse. Now he looked for places where the marks wouldn't be visible. He used the buckle of his belt on my back, stomach, legs, but never on my face again. Not since the school counselor had suspected something earlier. At 15, I started recording his outbursts. At first, it was a form of protection. I thought that if something really serious happened, I would have proof. I bought a used cell phone with the money I saved from doing jobs for schoolmates. I kept it hidden under my mattress. I charged it in the bathroom at night. The first audio I recorded was one night when he came home drunk and started breaking plates in the kitchen because dinner was cold. I heard the screams, objects breaking, my mother begging him to calm down. I turned on the recording and put the cell phone in my pajama pants pocket. When he came up to my room, I was waiting for him. I knew I would be next. He came in yelling that I was ungrateful, that I didn't appreciate everything he did for me. Do you think this roof over your head is free? Do you think this expensive school you're wasting is free? You piece of, The recording captured everything. The insults, the sound of the belt cutting through the air, my pleas for him to stop, the sobs I tried to hold back because I knew crying would only make him angrier. In the weeks that followed, I recorded more episodes. I created a pattern. Whenever I heard the front door slam shut, or the sound of keys being thrown angrily onto the table, or the first bottle being opened, I turned on the recording. It wasn't just the physical violence, it was the constant humiliation. You're too weak to be my son. I should have left you with your mother when I found out I was pregnant. Look at you. You don't even look like a man. I'm sure you're not. I collected those audio recordings as if they were weapons I would use one day. I still didn't know exactly how or when, but that was my only form of resistance. At that time, I was no longer sleeping well. I had constant nightmares. My performance at school was declining, which only made the situation at home worse. I started having anxiety attacks and panic attacks in the school bathroom. I lost weight because I often couldn't eat. My stomach was always closed up with fear. My mother noticed. One strange afternoon when we were alone at home, she came into my room and sat on the edge of the bed. Her eyes were always red, now with deep circles under them. She seemed to have aged 20 years in just 5. I need to tell you something, Lucas. She told me that she was secretly saving money, small amounts from her salary as a teacher. She kept it in an account that my father didn't know about. She was planning our escape. Just a few more months, Kafi-san. Hang in there for just 6 more months. We're going to go back to Monterey to stay with your grandmother. He'll never find us there. It was the first time in years that I felt hope, a light at the end of the tunnel. But we had to be cautious, she explained. If my father found out, it would be worse, much worse. Promise me you'll hold on, that you'll be strong just a little longer, I promised. But 2 days later, something happened that changed everything. I came home from school early because I had felt sick during gym class. A teacher drove me home. No one should have been home at that hour. My mother would have been at the school where she taught, and my father at work, but his car was in the garage. I heard voices in his room when I walked in. My first reaction was fear. If he was drunk at that hour, it would be even worse. I quietly approached the bedroom door. He was on the phone laughing, a laugh I almost didn't recognize because I rarely heard it. No, don't worry. They don't suspect anything. Clara is a complete idiot. She believes everything I tell her. The kid is weak, just like his mother. No, everything's under control. When we close this deal, I'll take my share and disappear. Fuck them. My heart raced. I didn't fully understand what he was talking about, but I realized that something even worse was going on. Some kind of scam, maybe something illegal at the company, and he was planning to abandon us. I turned on the recording on my hidden cell phone. I kept listening. Old man Cardenas doesn't suspect a thing. Yes, all the documents are ready. All that's missing is his signature. 2-3 months at most. 1.5 billion divided between the four of us. Cancun, we're going to live like kings. I backed away quietly. I left the house and stayed in the neighborhood park until it was time for school to let out. That recording changed everything for me. It wasn't just about the violence now. It was something much bigger. In the following weeks, I recorded more conversations. Little by little, I discovered that my father and 3 other colleagues from the company were planning some kind of fraud, something related to contracts with suppliers, invoicing, and shell companies. I didn't understand all the details, but I knew it was serious, and I knew it would be my way out of that hell. Meanwhile, the abuse continued. In fact, it got worse. He was more stressed, more violent. One night, after hitting me for finding a report card with low grades in my backpack, he said something he had never said before. If I wanted to, I could finish you off, make you disappear. No one would miss you, not even your mother. It wasn't the physical pain that marked me that day. It was his cold stare, as if I were nothing, as if he could really kill me without feeling anything at all. At that moment, I knew I had to act. We couldn't wait the 6 months my mother was planning. It was a matter of survival. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. My mother had gone to visit my grandmother in Monterey, who was ill. She hesitated a lot about leaving me alone with him, but I insisted that I would be fine. I already had a plan. During her absence, my father got worse, as if her presence, even weak and submissive as she was still some kind of restraint. That night he came home drunk, as usual, threw his keys on the table, and yelled my name. "Lucas, where's dinner?" I had prepared something simple, as I had been doing since my mother left, but nothing satisfied him. He complained that the food was cold, that it was unsalted, that I was useless like my mother. I remained calm. My cell phone was in my pocket, recording everything as usual, but that night I provoked him. For the first time, I didn't stay silent and accept everything. "Why don't you order food then? With the money you're stealing from the company, you should be able to order from the best restaurant in town." He froze. The fork he was holding fell onto his plate. His eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" I swallowed hard. I was scared, but I couldn't back down now. "I listened to your conversations. I know about the scam you're planning with your friends at work, about the money you're going to steal." He got up so fast that his chair fell backwards. He came towards me. I managed to dodge him and ran into the living room. He was too drunk to be quick. "Squealer, you don't know anything. I know enough. I know about the fake contracts, the shell companies, the money you're going to embezzle. I know you plan to abandon us afterwards." He stopped and studied me. His breathing was heavy, his face red with anger and alcohol. "What do you want? Money? That's what. I'll give you 1,000 pesos now to shut you up." It was my turn to laugh, a cold laugh that didn't seem like mine. "I don't want your money. I want you to leave. Leave me and Mom alone forever." He came back, knocking over a coffee table, breaking a picture frame. "You won't tell anyone. No one would believe you." I took my cell phone out of my pocket. "I have everything recorded, your conversations, your plans, and more. I have recorded every time you hit me in the last 2 years. Every threat, every insult. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes, but it didn't last long. Soon the rage returned. "Give me that phone now." I put the device back in my pocket. "I already sent copies of everything to the cloud, to emails you don't have access to. If anything happens to me, everything will go to the police, to the company, to everyone." It was a lie. I hadn't sent anything yet, but he didn't know that. We stood there in an impasse for a few seconds. He seemed to be weighing his options. Then his face changed. The cynical smile I hated so much returned. "You're smart, kid. Smarter than I thought. Maybe you are my son after all." He straightened his shirt and ran his hand through his hair. Let's make a deal. What exactly do you want? I already told you I want you to leave. Leave us alone and lose everything I've built. My career, my life. Your career will be over anyway when they discover the fraud. He approached me, now calmer, calculating. Look, let's be rational. We're men, we can talk. You're 16 now. You're not a kid. I can bring you into the business, give you a share. You and your mother will never have to worry about money again. I shook my head. I don't want your dirty money. I just want you to disappear. That's not going to happen. His voice hardened. And if you open your mouth, if you tell anyone about anything, I'll deny everything. I'll say you made this up because you're a troubled teenager. I have friends in the police, in the courts. Who do you think they're going to believe? Me or you? He was right. It was his word against mine. Even with the recordings, he had influence. He had money for good lawyers. He had cultivated the image of an exemplary father for years. But I had something he didn't expect. Determination. If you don't leave by tomorrow, I'll take everything to Mr. Cardenas. I saw his face turn pale. Cardenas was the president of the company, his direct boss, the person he was planning to defraud. You wouldn't do that. Try me. He advanced once more, now completely out of control. I'm gonna kill you, you son of a bitch. I ran to my room and locked the door. He banged on the door, shouted, threatened. At some point, after almost breaking down the door, he stopped. I heard his footsteps receding, then the sound of the front door closing, the car starting up with a roar. I spent the night awake with a chair leaning against the door. In the morning, he hadn't returned. I stayed home from school. I called my mother, but I didn't tell her anything. I didn't want to scare her while she was away. In the afternoon, he came back sober, too calm. Lucas, we need to talk. I kept my distance. I have nothing to talk to you about. I thought about it a lot. You're right. I was a terrible father. I drank too much. I lost control many times. I have no excuses for what I did to you and your mother, but I can change. I'll seek help, go to therapy, stop drinking. I didn't believe a word. It was manipulation as usual. And what you heard about the job, it was just talk. We're not going to do anything illegal. We were just speculating. I don't believe you. He sighed as if he were genuinely sorry. He was a good actor. I had to admit it. What can I do to make you believe me? So we can start over. Nothing. I want you to leave. This is my house too. I can't just leave. Then I'll go to Mr. Cardenas's office tomorrow. His face hardened again. You don't understand what you're doing. You're going to destroy this family. You already destroyed it. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. He didn't come home that night or the next. I called my mother. I told her everything was fine, that my father had traveled for work. I didn't want to worry her yet. On the third day, I made my decision. I organized all the recordings, the most shocking ones about the abuse, the clearest ones about the fraud, and copied them to a USB drive. I put on my best clothes, jeans without rips, a polo shirt, clean sneakers. I took a bus to the business center where my father worked, a 15-story building with a mirrored glass facade, a place I had only been to twice before for end-of-year parties. At the reception desk, I said I was Roberto Mendoza's son and needed to speak urgently with Mr. Cardenas for family reasons. The receptionist hesitated, but ended up calling the president's secretary. After a few minutes of waiting, I received permission to go up. Mr. Cardenas's office was on the top floor, spacious, with a view of the entire city. He greeted me with a warm smile, thinking I was there for some family emergency. Lucas, what a surprise. Your father isn't in the office today. He's at an off-site meeting. Did something happen? I took a deep breath. It was now or never. Mr. Cardenas, I need to show you something. It's important. It's about my father. I showed him the recordings. First, some about the abuse, just enough for him to understand what kind of man my father really was. He listened, silently, his face growing increasingly serious. My goodness, I had no idea. Then I showed him the recordings about the fraud, the details of the scheme, the names of the others involved, the values, the whole plan. Mr. Cardenas's face changed. Shock, then anger. He called security to the legal department. Within minutes, the office was full of executives in suits, all looking at me with a mixture of pity and disbelief. Where's your father now, Lucas? Mr. Cardenas asked. I don't know. He hasn't slept at home for 3 days. Cardenas asked me to repeat everything to the company lawyer. I told him about the scheme, about the others involved, 3 managers from different departments. I showed him all the evidence I had. And why are you doing this? Asked the lawyer, studying me suspiciously. I looked him straight in the eye. Because he destroyed our family, because he threatened my life, because I couldn't stand living in fear anymore. Mr. Cardenas put his hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, kid. We're going to resolve this, both professionally and otherwise. My father got a call on his cell phone. They told him they needed him urgently at the company, that there was a problem with one of the contracts that only he could resolve. He said he would be there in an hour. I waited in a smaller meeting room with a glass of water and a sandwich that the secretary brought me. I was shaking inside, but I was determined. There was no turning back. When my father arrived, he went straight to the president's office. I could hear the shouting even through the walls. His voice was indignant, then furious, then silence. I imagined that was when they showed him the recordings. The door opened. Suddenly, he came out like a hurricane, his face contorted with hatred. He saw me there and came toward me. 2 security guards grabbed him before he could reach me. You betrayed me. Ungrateful brat. That's when I heard that animalistic scream I mentioned at the beginning, the roar of a man who had lost everything in an instant. He struggled as the guards dragged him toward the elevator. You'll pay for this, kid. This isn't over. Mr. Cardenas left the office, accompanied by the lawyer and the head of security. We're going to call the police about the scam and everything else. You'll have to make a statement. Lucas, are you ready for that? I nodded. I was. I had rehearsed that moment mentally for months, maybe years. I need to call my mother first. He lent me his phone. I called my mother in Monterey. When I told her what I had done, there was a long silence on the other end. Lucas, what did you do? Her voice was filled with fear. I finished him off, Mom. He'll never hurt us again. But how? Why, my God, do you have any idea what this means? It means we're free. It's not that simple, son. She started to cry. I'm coming home today. Wait for me at home. Don't do anything else. But I couldn't wait at home. They took me to the police station to give my statement. I showed them the recordings again. Now, to the police, I showed them the old marks on my body. I told them everything from the beginning. My father was also there in another room. That's when I learned that he had been fired immediately, that the company was pressing criminal charges against him and the others involved in the scam. Fraud, criminal conspiracy. I spent hours at the police station. They called a social worker, a psychologist. I had to repeat my story several times to different people. I was exhausted, but I also felt something strange, a weight lifting off my shoulders for the first time in years. When they finally let me go, it was already nighttime. The social worker said she would take me home, that my mother should be arriving from Monterey soon. On the way, my cell phone rang. An unknown number. I answered. It was my father. You destroyed everything. Brat. Everything I built in 15 years. Do you know what's going to happen now? I'm going to lose my job, my house, my freedom. And when I get out of jail, because someday I will get out, the first thing I'm going to do is finish what I started with you. I hung up, trembling. The social worker noticed and asked me what was wrong. I didn't tell her. I was so scared I couldn't speak. We arrived home. My mother wasn't there yet. The social worker said she would wait with me, but she had to attend to an emergency elsewhere. She promised to come back in an hour and asked me to lock the door. My fear only grew, wondering if he would come for me before he was arrested. I checked all the windows and doors. I locked myself in my room with a kitchen knife. Every noise in the street startled me. Then I heard the sound of a car parking abruptly, doors closing, heavy footsteps climbing the stairs of the building, a key turning in the door. It was him. It had to be him. I pushed the dresser against my bedroom door. I called the police, whispering that my father was trying to get in, that he had threatened to kill me. I know you're there, Lucas. His voice on the other side of the door, thicker, slurred, drunk. Again, I began to hear banging on the door. He was trying to break it down. The thin wood wouldn't hold out for long. When I catch you, more banging. That's when I did something desperate. I opened my bedroom window. We were on the third floor. There was a small balcony, one of those barely decorative ones. You could hardly stand on it. The door began to give way. The dresser was shaking with the blows. He would be in within seconds. I went out onto the balcony. I looked down. It was too high to jump without seriously hurting myself, but there was a terrace in the apartment below, maybe 10 feet away, if I could reach it. The bedroom door flew open. The dresser tipped over. He came in, his face contorted, his eyes bloodshot. Something glinted in his hand, a piece of broken glass, probably from a bottle. Game over, kid. I climbed onto the edge of the balcony. His eyes widened. What are you going to do? Jump. Don't be stupid. My heart was beating so hard I thought it was going to explode. Fear paralyzed me, but what was about to happen inside that room terrified me even more. I closed my eyes and jumped. I don't remember the fall well, only the pain of the impact. I landed on the neighbor's terrace, but not the way I planned. My ankle bent in an impossible way. I heard the crack before I felt the pain. I screamed. The neighbor heard me. He came out to see what was going on. An older man, retired, who always greeted me when we passed each other in the elevator. I looked up. My father was on my balcony watching me. For a moment I thought he would jump after me, but then we heard the sirens. The police were coming. He disappeared inside. Minutes later, I heard the commotion in the building. The police coming up, forcing the apartment door open. Screams. Fighting. My father being taken away. Handcuffed, shouting threats to anyone who would listen. An ambulance took me to the hospital. Broken ankle, a few cuts and scrapes. Nothing serious considering the height of the fall. The doctor said I was lucky. My mother arrived at the hospital hours later, coming directly from the airport. Her eyes were swollen from crying so much. She hugged me, as she hadn't done in years, tightly, with a real presence. My son, what did we do to you? I realized she was blaming herself for not protecting me better, for not leaving that house sooner. I wanted to tell her it wasn't her fault, that she was also a victim, but the words wouldn't come out. I just cried in her arms like the child I couldn't be for so long. In the days that followed, everything was a blur. My father was taken into custody, both for the fraud scheme and for the attempted assault. I found out he had come back to kill me. The police found not only the piece of glass, but also a kitchen knife in his car. The company pressed charges. My mother filed for divorce and a restraining order. We had to give more statements, talk to more social workers, more psychologists, and then came the consequences I hadn't anticipated. The story leaked to the press. Executive exposed by his own son. Teenager reports $1 million fraud scheme and years of domestic abuse. My blurred photo in the newspapers. Reporters at our door. People at school found out. Some looked at me like a hero, others like a weirdo. The whispers in the hallways, the pitying looks. Suddenly, I was the Mendoza case kid. That's when I started to fall apart. Nightmares every night, panic attacks. I couldn't be home alone. I was afraid to sleep, afraid to wake up. I started cutting my arms with razor blades hidden in the bathroom. The physical pain seemed to ease some of the emotional pain that was consuming me. My mother found the cuts one day. The despair in her eyes was too much for me. I promised I wouldn't do it again, but that same night I cut deeper. The blood wouldn't stop flowing. I got dizzy. I fell in the bathroom. She found me unconscious. Hospital again. This time the psychiatric ward. Suicidal tendencies, they said. I needed constant supervision. I was hospitalized for 2 weeks. Then they transferred me to a specialized clinic for traumatized adolescents. The rehabilitation center was in a small town in the countryside, far from Mexico City, far from everything that reminded me of him. I spent 6 months there. Individual therapy, group therapy, medication, physical activities, private lessons so I wouldn't fall behind in school. It was there that I slowly began to rebuild myself, to understand that what had happened was not my fault, that I had done what was necessary to survive, that I'd saved not only myself and my mother, but perhaps prevented him from destroying many other lives with his actions. My father was convicted of corporate fraud, criminal conspiracy, and domestic violence. He received 12 years in prison. With the progression of his sentence, he will be eligible for a parole in 4 years. That information still haunts me. the idea that one day he will be free again. But I learned not to live in fear of the future, to focus on the present, on my recovery, on rebuilding my relationship with my mother, who was also in therapy. When I left the center 2 months ago, we were different people, stronger, more honest with each other, beginning to relearn how to live without fear. We moved back to Monterey, as was her original plan. We are living with my grandmother in a simple house, but one filled with light. I started at a new school. No one here knows my story. I can just be Lucas, the new student, not the boy from the Mendoza case. My mother is smiling again. So am I. We still have a long way to go sometimes, but for the first time in years, that road doesn't seem impossible to travel. The time I spent at the rehabilitation center was the most difficult, and at the same time, the most transformative of my life. At first, I didn't talk to anyone. I spent my days curled up in bed, having nightmares, even when I was awake. The therapists were patient. They didn't force me to talk until I was ready. There were other teenagers there with stories similar to mine. Abuse, violence, deep trauma. Little by little, in the group sessions, I began to open up, to listen, to realize that I wasn't alone. My therapist, Dr. Melissa, helped me understand that what I did was not betrayal. As my father shouted that day, it was self-preservation. It was justice. You didn't destroy your father, Lucas, she told me. He destroyed himself with his own decisions. You simply refused to be destroyed along with him. During those months, I received a few letters from my mother. She couldn't visit me often because of the distance, but she wrote to me every week. She told me how she was reorganizing our life, how she had gotten a new job in Monterey, how my grandmother's house was waiting for us. In one of the letters, she wrote something I will never forget. You saved us both, son. I should have been strong enough to do this, but I couldn't. You were brave when I couldn't be. I will never fail you like that again. At the center, I learned techniques to manage panic attacks, to calm my mind when memories came back as flashbacks, to identify the triggers that led me to self-destructive thoughts. The scar on my left wrist from the deepest cut I made that night is still there. Sometimes I look at it and feel ashamed. Other times I see it as a reminder of where I was and how I managed to get out. I finished the school year with private lessons at the center. They weren't the best grades of my life, but they were enough to keep me from failing the year. Small victories. When I was finally discharged and returned to the outside world, I was nervous, scared. The center had become a safe place with predictable rules and routines. Out there, everything seemed too big, too loud. My mother came to pick me up. We made the plane trip to Monterey in silence, our hands clasped together throughout the flight. She was different too, thinner, but somehow stronger. Her eyes no longer had that empty, defeated look. My grandmother's house was exactly as I remembered it from my childhood summer vacations. Small, cozy, with plants everywhere and the smell of fresh coffee in the mornings. My grandmother, now in her 70s, hugged me for so long when I arrived that I thought she would never let go. My boy, she repeated. My boy is home. The first few weeks were about adjustment. I continued therapy, now with a new professional in Monterey. I began to explore the city, rediscovering places I frequented as a child. The beach at Tampico, a 5-hour drive away, became my refuge. I went there almost every weekend after therapy. I would sit on the sand and look at the sea. The sound of the waves calmed me like no medicine could. My mother got a job at a private school as a literature teacher. She earned less than she did in Mexico City, but the cost of living was also lower. And without my father draining our money on alcohol and his extravagances, we could live well. The new school started a month ago. On the first day, I stood paralyzed at the entrance, unable to walk through the door. I was afraid of being recognized, of someone knowing my story, of becoming the Mendoza case boy again. My mother noticed and stayed by my side. One step at a time, son. I'm here. I walked in and, to my surprise, it was normal. Just another day of class, just another new student. The curious glances were just the usual ones for any newcomer, not the looks of pity or gossip I feared. I made some acquaintances. Maybe they can become friends someday. It's still hard to trust people. It's still hard to let anyone get too close, but I'm trying. We get updates on the criminal case from time to time. The lawyer the company appointed to help us keeps in touch. My father tried to get his Sentence reduced by claiming that I had fabricated evidence, but the recordings were proven to be authentic. He also tried to sue us for parental alienation. How ironic. But the judge summarily dismissed the lawsuit. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing. Not for him. He deserved everything that happened to him and more. But for me, for us. Exposing everything like that, turning our pain into a public case, was difficult, traumatic in its own way. Maybe we could have just run away like my mother's original plan, started over somewhere else, without all the drama, without the newspapers, without me becoming the son who denounced the father. But then I remember the other people he would hurt, the coworkers who trusted him, the company that would be defrauded of millions, future employees who would suffer his abusive behavior as a boss, maybe even another family he would form after abandoning us. No, I don't regret it. I had to grow up too fast. It's true. I had to make decisions that no teenager should ever have to make. But if all this served to break the cycle of abuse, to prevent him from continuing to destroy lives, it was worth it. My current therapist says that it takes time to heal such deep wounds, that I shouldn't pressure myself to get over everything quickly, that trauma is stored in the body, not just the mind, and that recovery is not linear. I have good days and bad days. Days when I can smile, go out with school friends, help my grandmother in the garden, study for exams like any normal teenager, and days when I can barely get out of bed, when the weight of the past seems to crush me, when the nightmares return and I feel like that terrified child again, locked in my room as heavy footsteps approach on the stairs. But the good days are becoming more frequent than the bad ones. Slowly, gradually, my mother is healing too. She took up painting again, a hobby she had given up years ago because my father considered it a waste of time. She's taking dance classes twice a week. She started wearing bright colors again, laughing more easily. One night, sitting on the porch of my grandmother's house, she asked me, "Do you think we'll ever be able to forget all this?" I thought for a moment before answering. I don't think we will forget, nor should we. But maybe one day the memory won't hurt so much. She nodded, taking my hand. "You're much stronger than I ever was, you know?" I disagree. Surviving all those years also required strength. It's just that now we're using our strength in a different way. I don't know what the future holds for us. I know I still have a long way to go, that I'll probably need therapy for many years, that I may always have certain triggers, certain fears. I also know that in a few years, my father could be in a semi-open prison and eventually free. I try not to think about that. We have restraining orders. He can't come near us, but the fear is still there, buried deep. For now, I'm focused on finishing high school, rebuilding my life one day at a time, rediscovering who I am without the constant weight of fear, learning to trust people again, and yes, on days like today, sharing my story. Not for fame or attention, but because I know there are other Lucas out there, other teenagers living in homes that look perfect on the outside, but are battlefields on the inside. Other sons and daughters who believe they have no way out, that no one will believe them, that they are alone against monsters that everyone else sees as exemplary people. If you've made it this far and understand what I went through, if you really care about my story, please like this video, subscribe to the Testimonios Traumaticos channel, turn on the bell, and tell me what time it is where you are while you watch this. It seems silly, but knowing that there is someone on the other side listening to me, perhaps understanding or even identifying with me, means more than I can explain. And if you're like I was, trapped in a situation that seems hopeless, you should know that there's hope, that there are people who will believe you, that you deserve to be protected, loved, and respected. The truth comes at a price. Exposing monsters, even those who live in our own homes, is not easy, but silence comes at an even higher price. I almost paid for it with my life. Don't let yourself go that far. Today, I am sitting in this empty square because I chose to live. I chose the truth. I chose a future, albeit uncertain, albeit sometimes terrifying. And for the first time in many years, when I look toward that future, I can see more than just survival. I can see possibilities, and that, after all, may be the greatest victory.